Hi everybody, my name is Emily Egan and I'm a category manager and I work in OGP sourcing spot buying team. A key element of our portfolio remit is to deliver strategic, high priority projects for the Irish public sector. While some projects may not be high cost, they could be critical to the enabling delivery of government objectives by public sector bodies. I'm here today to introduce you to OGP's Technical Services Framework for Open Data and Data Management. It has become increasingly clear over recent years that open data is an important resource for the Irish Government. The new EU Open Data Directive 2019, which was adopted into Irish law in July 2021, mandates that government data should be open by design and default. It requires that all public sector bodies make requested data available to the public in open and machine-readable format. In order for public sector bodies to meet their obligations under this new directive, we, the OGP, in collaboration with our parent Department of Public Expenditure Reform's Open Data Unit, have put in place a new direct drawdown framework to allow public sector bodies to simply and compliantly draw down technical services for open data and data management. The framework is very innovative, flexible and user-friendly, and enables public sector bodies to create a data ecosystem that will improve how they govern, manage and reuse data in secure and efficient manner for the benefit of citizens, businesses and policymakers. Since its launch in January 2022, the framework has proven hugely successful. Many public sector bodies have drawn down services. This framework covers a wide range of services, including data audits, data maturity assessments, open data roadmaps, an open data platform, consultancy services, and many more. The OGP also has an open data training framework in place, which is managed by our colleagues in travel, HR, and managed services. For the purpose of today, we've asked Alan Murphy from Smart Dublin to speak to you on their real-world experience with open data. Alan will speak to you about how open data is enabling innovation. He will showcase 2 open data innovation challenges that tackle the topical themes of active travel and climate action, and I expect you'll find this interesting. Just to remind you, we have a stand here today in the Podle room if you require more information on this framework. I'm now going to hand over to Alan to give you his presentation. Enjoy and thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. So Alan Murphy, Regional Manager with Smart Dublin. I'm going to talk about everything that Emily just said I'm going to talk about, I think. Yeah. And many thanks to Emily and her team for inviting us, Smart Dublin, here today to talk about a real-life application as to what value open data brings to everyday life. Okay, so a quick intro to Smart Dublin. I suppose the presentation is made up of 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the bread and butter activity we have of unlocking open data across the 4 councils. And I think this process and the methodology we use would apply to any public sector body who's looking at the whole open data journey. And I stress that word journey. It very much is a roadmap, as Emily outlined, to look at your organisation as to where are the opportunities to unlock open data. And then the second part of the presentation is to talk about the innovation around open data. So very much our bread and butter is to unlock the data, publish it, and it's there for the general public, the market, if you like, to use open data as they see fit. And we've always sort of grappled with, well, how are people actually using the open data that we've really put in a bit of effort to unlock? So I'll talk to you about the innovation projects that we've done around our open data sets, as well as open data from other public sector bodies. So a quick intro to Smart Dublin. We're an initiative of the 4 Dublin local authorities. We're very much in the innovation space. So as Emily said, we're looking at emerging technologies and data opportunities to improve the public services that your council provides. and there's hundreds of council services that Dublin City Council, Dún Laoghaire, Fingal and South Dublin, as well as across the 31 local authorities in the country provide. To just zoom in on the Venn diagram you see there, so it's all about providing better services, promoting innovative solutions. So again, innovation. How can we do things differently? What new technology can we use to deliver a particular public service? You know, the end game here is we get Dublin running more efficiently, the Dublin region. So therefore, we hope that our activities would improve economic activity in the Dublin region. But a big part of how we work is to engage with diverse stakeholders, so central government, academia, citizens as well as industry, to take risks, to trial and pilot solutions, to deliver a better public service. So that points to the circle in the Venn diagram around increasing collaboration and engagement. So that's kind of what we do. We've been up and running since 2016, and our portfolio of projects and activity has just grown and grown since then. Okay, so to zoom in on open data specifically, what you see here is a collage of open data examples from different organizations, not necessarily from the 4 Dublin councils. To pick a few examples, so the map of Ireland there on the top right is from the EPA, beaches.ie. So if anybody's into sea swimming, you might check the bathing water quality before you hop in the sea. The picture of Dublin bus there, I think we all might have read about the vanishing Dublin buses in the news recently. So what's happening there is something called real-time passenger information is being provided by the NTA, so another public sector body, onto the bus stops that we manage in the Dublin region. So we need to get better, working with them as to the accuracy of that information that's on the bus stops. It really impacts on a decision that somebody will make to not take the private car. Will they take a more sustainable mode of transport? Is this information reliable? So another real-life example of how valuable open data is. And maybe another example, the bottom left there is the rental prices. Although looking at the numbers there, if you can read them, they looks like an old extract or screenshot from that particular portal, because the rental prices look a lot lower than they are now. So real examples of how maybe even this morning you've consumed open data coming from different public sector organizations. So then just to come back into our world a little bit. So we run and we manage an open data portal called Dublinked. At the moment, we've got about 550 data sets published, basically using a taxonomy or a catalogue, and that maybe you can see it there, broken down into a hierarchy or a taxonomy as to how the services the council provides can be categorised. So anything to do with cultural activities, mobility is a hugely valuable asset to play into the sustainable mobility decisions I just spoke about. Anything to do with parks and recreation, anything with public health and safety, anything to do with communities. It's kind of hard to read here a little bit. Anything to do with environment and energy. So we're scanning across the 4 councils, looking at the services they provide and putting them into this kind of taxonomy and trying to unlock the relevant data set from that section. That's what this portal is all about. And compliments to Emily and her team that they provided the OGP technical services framework for us to tap into to avail of services from a third party called Dairylinks, who help us host and maintain this portal. So an example of a data set, and to zoom in on the mobility data set, which I said is of huge value, that seems to be consumed quite a lot by the general public. This is a snapshot or a photo of accessibility parking bays out in Dún Laoghaire. So what we're going to do, the councils, we're going to put sensors in the grounds of these bays, which will then feed an API, a real-time API, as to the occupancy of those parking bays. So that can be picked up by whatever app, so think maybe a parking app, or even by Google for some journey planning, to help people that have mobility issues to understand or is there a parking spot going to be available at this location in Dún Laoghaire in this case. So the key message here is that the councils are enabling or unlocking the relevant data set to be picked up by whatever service and then provided to the citizen that they could consume to help them with their planning their journey to this location. So that's just a really simple use case amongst the 550 data sets that I mentioned. What this slide then tries to highlight, and I know it's going to be impossible to read at the back of the room, but on top of that open data platform that we have with all the data sets listed, we tacked on a bit of Power BI analytics on top of that catalog to understand, well, who's actually looking at the data sets, what data sets are people looking at. We've got 4 councils. Can we introduce a bit of peer pressure amongst the councils to say, okay, well, people are really interested in a new data set that's been published by Dublin City Council. Hey, Dún Laoghaire Rathdown, would you be interested or could you release or publish similar data sets? And we're also going through a harmonization approach across the 4 councils to make sure that the data sets are consistent. So in terms of frequency, in terms of the file format, etc. So just to give you a quick overview as to what this actually says. So again, mobility data is really popular in the top left from Dublin City Council, really popular in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown. I've circled trees. There's a trees data set in Fingal that seemed to have got really popular or quite an active interaction from the public. And then that spurs an internal conversation back in Fingal with the relevant section as to, hey, did you know that the data set on trees that you've published recently is getting a lot, is trending quite high. So it spurs that kind of conversation as to what we can do next with the open data. Okay, so then, well, what happens to this open data? Where else does it go? So what this slide shows you is from left to right, from the respective Dublin Council. So this screenshot is coming from, I think it's from Fingal, is it? Yeah. Then it gets published to our regional open data portal, the Dublin portal. But then it goes on to the national portal, which is managed by Deeper. And then Deeper pass it on to the EU open data platform. So all of us as public sector bodies, your respective organisation would be step 1 and possibly passing directly to the national portal, which would then be passed on to the EU portal. So there's an onus on all of us working in whatever public sector organisation to pass to Deeper's national portal, which then goes on to the European platform. Okay, so that's the first part of the presentation, which was talking about the bread and butter, the day-to-day activity, looking across all the services the council provides and what data can be unlocked. Just to quickly mention FOIs, there's a huge opportunity to look at FOIs retrospectively and try to understand, well, what relevant data sets could be unlocked to reduce that volume of FOIs or repeated FOIs. So again, that's an internal conversation and activity we're doing, which we think will lead to more data sets being published. So the second part of the presentation is now looking at, we were always grappling with the exam question we'd get from our internal stakeholders as, sure, what value is it in me cleansing this data and publishing it? So what we try to do is do a challenge-based approach in a very open way with the market to say, look, we have this open data. We're publishing it across the 4 councils. There's other open data coming from Irish public sector bodies. What would you do with it? So what the Lego analogy is trying to articulate, starting from the top, we have this data. It's not perfect. It has to be sorted out. It has to be arranged in some way, and then we publish it. What we want to prompt the market to do, working with academia, working with industry, working with whoever wants to look at this data, how could you present it back to us visually in a more meaningful way? Or could you add a story to it? What insight could you add to it? So the analogy here from the data, we're building a house. or is there something else that the data could be useful for? If you combine our data set with something else, are we getting a revelation or some sort of insight? So we've done 2 of these challenge-based approaches. The first one we did was around active travel. So how can we use open data from anywhere to promote active travel, to get people out of the private car, which talks to the whole the climate change agenda that's happening over in COP27 at the moment. So this was an advertisement to the market to say, we have this data set. This is our objective, to promote active travel. Can you submit in ideas and concepts to help us and our active travel officers better promote and use data to promote active travel? So we got 38 applications from a diversity of applicants. We went through a shortlisting process. We worked with the NTA on this. There was other organisations involved in this challenge-based approach, and we had 3 prize winners. And we did a show and tell and a webinar to show the ideas that came through. And just to highlight the first prize winner, this is from a project which is called Where's the Crack, which is a great name. And just the context of this is during COVID lockdown, right? So what this project is all about is dropping a pin on the map, and then within a 5-minute, 10-minute walk, showing you what activities, parks, cultural activities, if they were open at the time, what could you do in your immediate environment? And it really helped just, get us thinking about, okay, wow, we can get this message out through our PPN network, through our active travel officers, etc., as to what data we have, and encourage people to go to their local amenities, which are, we were all restricted to the 5K sort of restrictions back then in COVID. So interesting project. And of course, this kind of open data can be picked up by other services. You can imagine other apps that we use, which is picking up this sort of what's happening in my local area suite of data sets. And then to the other climate action challenge that we did this year, similar process again. So this was looking at the climate action plans within the 4 councils, working with our climate action officers. Again, how can open data help with nature-based solutions, mobility again, the adoption of renewable energy? So we got in a more diverse set of applications, some 37 applications, shortlisted that again, and again we had 3 prize winners. And again, just to focus on the first prize that won that particular challenge, what you see again is something similar, but this is looking at remote working hubs. So the idea behind this is that could large employers or even a public sector body identify, and even an end user, identify a remote working hub that's in their neighbourhood that they could go to based on the amenities that you might see on the left-hand side in terms of, is there parking there? Is there a restaurant nearby? Do they have good Wi-Fi, etc.? So to encourage people to think differently about, well, you don't maybe have to go to the office, or if you don't want to stay at home, you could perhaps go to a hub where some of your colleagues also may be working. So again, a similar sort of visualization of locally, is there a remote working hub in this case that's suitable for you, that ticks all the boxes for you, that you could go and work from remotely. So they're the 2 challenges we've done recently. There was other amazing concepts that we're working with separately, but I just decided to focus in on the 2 first prize winners. So then, just as key takeaways, back to the first part of the presentation, we talked about beaches.ie, the real-time passenger information, the rental index, all the services that the council provides. All these data sets fall under open data, and they add huge value to everyday life. We just may not be aware of that we're actually consuming open data. And to point 2 again, it's about the whole publication process. It really is a journey. Some organizations will be ahead of the curve, and other organizations are sort of grappling with the directive that Emily mentioned. Okay, how do we go about this? Where do we start? And my tip would be one bite at a time. What we did, we looked at the EU value data sets, and there's kind of a hierarchy as to which data sets they determine as being more valuable, as in more valuable to the general public than others. And for us, mobility-related data was absolutely number one. So we targeted our transport section first, and we'll move on to the environmental section next, housing next, etc. So take one step at a time. And then last point, the whole innovation process that I described, working with diverse stakeholders and putting the problem out there to say, we have this data, we're not really sure what to do with it. It'd be amazing what kind of innovation and insight you'd get back. Okay, so that's me.